His First Flight, written by Liam Ó Flaherty. Now, this story is about a family of seagulls. There was a young child in the family who was unable to fly even after several tries. His two brothers and sister have already taken flight, and the whole family is eagerly waiting for the young seagull to take off. The story highlights the importance of family and friends in one's life. It also gives the message that one needs to believe in self to overcome all the hurdles of own life. So here in the seagull family, it consists of 6 seagulls, mother, father, 3 sons and 1 daughter. Now let's see whether the seagull is able to fly or not. The young seagull was alone on his ledge. His 2 brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. So here the young seagull, it was sitting alone on his ledge. Ledge means it's a narrow horizontal surface from the side of a cliff, and cliff is a high steep rock. So he was sitting alone. His 2 brothers and sister had already flown away the day before, and he was afraid to fly with them. He tried. He just ran forward the brink of the ledge, means edge of the ledge, and he tried to flap his wings also, but he became afraid. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. He felt certain that his wings would never support him, so he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he slept at night. So now the youngest son, that is seagull, he is afraid of flying, as he thinks that if he flies, his wings would not support him and he would fall down in the sea below and drown. So he tried, but again he came back to the little hole which was under the ledge, and he slept at night before. Even when each of his brother and his sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. So even his brothers and sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, they also learned to fly. They just flew away. But he could not muster up. Muster up means to gather the courage to take that plunge. Plunge means dive, which appeared to him so desperate. Means he was so desperate to fly. His father and mother had come around, calling to him shrilly, scolding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away. But for the life of him, he could not move. So his father and mother had come around calling to him shrilly. They scolded him, threatened him that if he doesn't fly, he would die of hunger. They even rebuked him, but he did not try. He could not move. That was 24 hours ago, since nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about, his brothers and sister, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had in fact seen his brother catch his first herring and devour it, standing on a rock, while his parents circled around, raising a proud cackle. And all the morning the whole family had walked about on the big plateau, midway down the opposite cliff, laughing at his cowardice. So, since 24 hours, nobody had come near him. And the day before, all day he had watched his parents, flying with his brothers and sister. They were teaching him and teaching them the art of flight, how to skim the waves. Skim means moving lightly over the surface. How to dive, how to hunt the fish or dive for the fish. And he also saw that his older brother had caught his first herring, means a long thin silver sea fish. Herring is a kind of sea fish which is silver. And they were standing on the rock and circling around him, raising a proud cackle, a loud, unpleasant laugh. And all the morning the whole family had walked about on a big plateau, means they just walked about another plateau, the opposite cliff, and laughing at his cowardice. They all were laughing at him. Nobody came near him to offer food. The young seagull just looked at his brothers and sister enjoying, swimming, diving in the seawater for fish to feed themselves, and no one came near to offer him anything. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing warmly on his ledge that faced south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. Then he had found a dried piece of mackerel's tail at the far end of his ledge. Now there was not a single scrap of food left. He had searched every inch, rooting among the rough, dirt-caked straw nest where he and his brothers and sister had been hatched. He even gnawed at the dried pieces of eggshell. It was like eating part of himself. So now the sun was ascending the sky, it was blazing, means it was shining with great heat. And it was, he was feeling a lot of heat, intense heat. And he was hungry also, because he had not eaten anything since last night. He could not tolerate the hunger and the heat, so he moved closer to the ledge and he searched for the food. He even gnawed, Gnawed, gnaw means to bite at something. So even gnawed at the dried pieces of eggshell. So he was so much hungry. He then trotted back and forth from one end of the ledge to the other, his long grey legs stepping daintily, trying to find some means of reaching his parents without having to fly. But on each side of him, the ledge ended in a sheer fall of precipice with the sea beneath, and between him and his parents there was a deep wide crack. So he then trotted back and forth. Trotted back and forth means he was just running with a moderate speed with short steps. Trot means when somebody runs in a moderate speed with short steps. So he was just moving from one end to the other end of the ledge, his long grey legs stepping daintily. Daintily means very gracefully. He was just trying to find some means so that he could reach his parents without flying. But how he could fly? Because on each side of him the ledge ended in a sheer fall of precipice. Precipice, a very steep side of a high mountain. So there was a deep wide crack, means he could not go there. There was a very deep and wide crack distance. Surely he could reach them without flying if he could only move northwards along the cliff face. But then on what could he walk? There was no ledge, and he was not a fly, and above him he could see nothing. The precipice was sheer, and the top of it was perhaps farther away than the sea beneath him. So he could not find any way to go to his family. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge, and standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still, they took no notice of him. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. Only his mother was looking at him. So now he stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge. So he just came again to the edge of the ledge. And then what he did, he just pretended to be asleep so that everyone will take a notice to him. So he just pretended to fall asleep, but nobody took notice of him. And then he saw that his brothers and sister have already had heavy breakfast, and father seems busy in admiring and cleaning the feather on his back. Here, preening means to clean and arrange the feathers by its beak. So his father was busy in preening. Mother looks, and the mother took notice, and she was looking at him. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau. Now and again she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet, and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. He uttered a low cackle. His mother cackled too and looked over at him. So now he saw that his mother was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, and what she was doing, now and again she was tearing at a piece of fish which was lying at her feet, and then she would scrap each side of her beak on the rock. Scrap means they just do to sharpen. So she was doing this, and the sight of the food maddened this young seagull. And he remembered that how he loved to tear food like this, the way the mother was doing? Actually, the mother was, tempting him with a piece of fish so that maybe he would fly for the fish. But what happened? He uttered a low cackle. He just cackle, you all know, no? I just told you cackle means when to laugh loudly. But here he uttered a low cackle because he was hungry. And then his mother cackled too. And then she looked over at him. Ga 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 ga, she cried, begging her to bring him over some food. Galua, she screamed back mockingly. But he kept calling plaintively. And after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of fish and was flying across to him with it. So now, ga ga ga, he just cried for begging. He was begging her to bring that piece of fish for him because he was so hungry. And what happened? The mother also screamed back, and she didn't do anything. Now the seagull, he kept calling plaintively, sadly. And he was wondering that why his mother is not giving her food, and why she is so ignorant of his pitiful condition. So after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. But then, after a minute, he just screamed joyfully. Why? Because he saw that his mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposite him, abreast of the ledge, what happened? She halted. She just stopped, her legs hanging limp, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. His mother had swooped upwards. As he passed beneath her, he heard the swish of her wings. So now, he waited for a moment in surprise. He was so much surprised that why his mother is ignorant of this condition. So, thus, what he did? He just dived for the food, and he began to fall down with a scream as soon as he dived. And his mother had swooped upwards. The mother also, swooped means she just took a flight a little upward. And as he passed beneath her, he heard the swish of her wings. And then he heard the swish of her mother's wings. Swish means the sound of when moving with, rushing or hissing sound. So he was just near her mother. Then a monstrous terror seized him, and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a moment. The next moment, he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. So now the young seagull, he began to fly. But there was a monster terror. Monster means very fearful. So he had a fear. It seized him. Seized him means caught. So a terror caught him means he just frightened, and his heart stood still. He became, heart stood still means he became so frightened. He could hear nothing. He became motionless. But it was just for a moment. And the next moment, what he felt? He felt his wings spread outwards, and the wind rushed against his breast feathers. He could feel the speed that he is flying, and he could feel it under his stomach, against his wings, and he could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. Means he was flying in a great speed. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. He uttered a joyous scream and flapped them again. He soared higher. He raised his breast and banged against the wind. Ga 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 ga. Gowl. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her mother. Another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw his two brothers and sister flying around him, soaring and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly, and commenced himself to dive and soar, shrieking shrilly. So now he was so happy. He uttered a joyous scream. He just screamed in joy. He flapped the wings again. He soared higher. Soared means flew higher and higher. He raised his breast, and then he was just singing, ga 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 ga. His mother also swooped past him. Her wings began making a loud noise. Then he saw that his father also came here near to him. His brothers, to both of the brothers, sisters, they also were flying around him and soaring and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly. He just forgot that once he was not able to fly, and commenced himself to dive, and so, and now he has commenced means began. He began himself to dive. Now he could dive. He could soar, shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing out over this ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him, with little ridges moving over it. And he turned his beak sideways and crowed amusedly. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on this green floor in front of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no farther. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. So now the young seagull became so happy, and he soared higher, calling ga ga ga. So it was really a joyous moment for whole family, his brothers, sisters, along with his parents. They all came near to him, encouraged him, and cheered him as the young seagull successfully made his first flight. Now, Vivekananda has also said, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. So, what we learnt from this story? Yes, it is natural that doing something for the first time is a bit challenging and fearful. We face some problems in the initial stage while learning new skills. And due to the fear of failure, we hesitate to perform a task or to do something new, as in the case of the seagull. But if someone is determined to do something, then success is assured. Moreover, I said, practice makes a man perfect.